Yeah. Yeah. We just need to bring the whole file down. Do you want me to bring your? Yeah.
Oh, did you already tell them that you're ready for them?
I'll bring the.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I mean, I think. We need to.
All right, we're going to go on the record. Court is calling 2022 CR 4248A, State of Texas versus Jose Angel Ruiz. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Brittany Mitchell, Marissa Giovanco, and Allie Jackson for the state.
For the defense?
Teresa Connolly, Renee Munoz, and Lorraine Efron.
All right, and are you Mr. Ruiz? All right, you may have a seat. All right, so off the record, my understanding, defense, you've served the defense counsel?
The state.
I'm sorry, the state?
Defense counsel served Brittany Mitchell with a subpoena for a copy of, not just give it to me because they won't give it to me, but to have available the statement of Jordan Lasoya.
All right, so I remember us having a hearing previously about this video, and defense was allowed to have their client view the entirety of the video. So what specifically are, I don't understand what's being
We're
asked
looking
of.
specifically, I'm referring to this in my opening. I mean, may want to show a copy of her video if she doesn't testify the way she testified in the, or the way she's made the statement in the report.
All right, so none of this has happened yet, correct?
No.
She hasn't
No.
testified. So what's the
No.
purpose of serving the
Just so
state?
that we're sure that we're able to get a copy of the video to show if in fact we need to.
State, do you have a copy of the video?
We have a copy available for defense counsel. If that becomes something that they need to do, we can approach and deal with it that way.
All right, so I'm still at a loss as to what was the purpose of serving the state.
The state
When-
may not have it available, Your Honor. Supposedly it's up in their office. I wanted to be able to be available if I need to show it.
Okay.
I don't think that would be difficult to do if it's upstairs in their office. They just go upstairs to bring it down. All right, so are you then releasing her or removing your request for her to be under subpoena?
Yes, only for the purpose of this, to show.
All right,
that-
may I see the subpoena, please?
I'm so sorry. I have a bottle, so I wouldn't spill it. Of course, I spill it right away.
I made sure.
All right, it says here that she's being subpoenaed to testify. So
No,
you're
That's a
removing her.
mistake. That's a mistake.
All right, so you're withdrawing your subpoena?
Only, yes, Your Honor, because at this point she knows she needs to have that available. Yes.
All right, so here's the thing. If people want things available, you all need to talk to each other. You're all officers of the court. Everybody is entitled to a fair trial, both the state and the defense. So just talk to each other. Are you all ready? Yes.
Ms. Giovanka and I have a matter that was on quickly.
What matter are you all approaching on? Oh, please be seated.
There's one chair further down.
You know, it's in my-
All right, everyone, please be seated. I hope you all were able to find decent parking. All right, so you were given an oath downstairs, but I'm going to give you an oath as it relates to this particular case. So if everyone could please raise your right hand for me, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm in the case of the state of Texas versus Jose Angel Ruiz, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you may lower your hand. State.
True bill of indictment. In the name and by authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized and paneled and sworn as such at the May term AD 2022 of the 186th Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term, do present in and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and interior to the presentment of this indictment, count 1, paragraph A. On or about the 7th day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause serious bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by a manner and means unknown to the grand jury. Paragraph B. On or about the 7th day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly, by omission, cause serious bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, and the defendant had assumed care, custody, and control of Mercedes Lozoya and failed to do so, and that the defendant failed to seek adequate medical treatment for Mercedes Lozoya. Count 2. On or about the 28th day of January 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did use and exhibit a deadly weapon, namely hands, that in the manner of its use and intended use was capable of causing death and serious bodily injury, and defendant did intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, hereinafter referred to as complainant, by covering the mouth and nose of Mercedes Lozoya with the hand of the defendant. Count 3. On or about the 21st day of January 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by striking Mercedes Lozoya with the hand of the defendant. Count 4. On or about the 23rd day of January 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by pinching Mercedes Lozoya with the hand of the defendant. Count 5. On or about the 1st day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by inserting tacks into the feet of Mercedes Lozoya. Count 6. On or about the 2nd day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by striking Mercedes Lozoya with a belt. Count 7. On or about the 3rd day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who is 14 years of age or younger, by pulling the hair of Mercedes Lozoya with the hand of the defendant. Count 8. On or about the 5th day of February 2022, Jose Ruiz, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause bodily injury to Mercedes Lozoya, a child who was 14 years of age or younger, by striking Mercedes Lozoya with a cell phone. Against the peace and dignity of the state, signed the foreman of the grand jury.
Right, to those charges, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
Right, you may be seated. Any opening statements from the state?
Yes, Judge.
You may proceed.
May I please report? Opposing counsel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. In our career, the things we see are things people don't want to see.
We see a lot of horrible things working in criminal law. Sometimes those things are even extra horrible to us. In this case, you're gonna have to see things that nobody should ever have to see. Let alone things that a child at the age of 5 should have to endure. We apologize in advance for having to show you these awful things, but unfortunately we have to. We have to show you things that this man, Jose Ruiz, and Mercedes Lozoya, who's the 5-year-old, her mother, Katrina Mendoza, sorry, did to Mercedes. You're going to hear that Katrina had 2 young children at a very young age, Mercedes and Jordan. Jordan is about 9 months older than Mercedes. You're going to hear that according to Jose and Katrina, Mercedes was the child that just wouldn't listen. She was the bad kid. You're going to hear that Katrina and Jose were dating. And at some point in the relationship, they weren't living together. And you're going to hear from the evidence that some point in the relationship, Katrina's talking to Jose about Mercedes and how she just won't listen. And Jose says, let me have her. She'll listen to me. Jose takes custody of Mercedes. He takes her to his apartment. Katrina and Jordan don't go. You're going to hear from the evidence that they join them later. That Katrina and Jordan join them later, and they live at Jose's apartment for about 2 weeks. You're going to hear that those 2 weeks were the last 2 weeks of Mercedes' life. You're going to hear about the torture that Mercedes endured. You're going to hear from a lot of witnesses in this case. You're going to hear from police. You're going to hear from medical personnel. You're going to hear from neighbors that could hear this man beating Mercedes through the walls. And they could hear her crying out for help. You're going to hear from Katrina Mendoza. We want you to know that we don't think she's a good mother, if I haven't made that clear at this point. But she accepted a plea bargain in this case. She was also a defendant in this case. And she accepted a plea bargain, and she is here to testify about what Jose Ruiz did in this case, because she's accepted responsibility for her part. You're going to hear that Katrina and Jose pointed fingers at each other this whole time. But like I've said, Katrina's accepted responsibility. She has taken a plea bargain in this case. You're going to hear, or you're going to see the evidence, and it's going to show you that both Katrina and Jose are guilty of abusing 5-year-old Mercedes. And you're going to have more than enough evidence at the end of this trial to find this man guilty of all counts.
Defense?
Here, I got it. Oh, sorry.
Sorry for the holdup, guys. And please the court,
I got you.
opposing counsel,
How close?
ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I have this. I also took notes as I'm covering quite a bit. Precious little Mercedes Lozoya was killed on February 7th of 2022, excuse me. Under Texas law, you recognize killing a person as murder. No murder charge.
I'm going to object, Judge. She's violating her own motion in limine.
Sustained.
The murder, I'm just reciting what the law is. Crime,
Can we approach Judge?
No, the objection is sustained.
Okay, but she's,
murder of someone 10 years of age. or younger.
Excuse me,
that,
the objection has been sustained, counsel.
Sorry, I can't mention murder.
objection.
Jose didn't save Mercedes. Didn't save her life. He was the hookup boyfriend of Katrina, the mother. He hadn't adopted the children, didn't live with the children, let them stay there for a couple weeks, but that was it. CBS had investigated Katrina for years. They have pages and pages of records against Katrina.
I'm sorry to interrupt again. I'm just gonna object to argumentative.
All right, that'll be overruled.
San Antonio police didn't save Mercedes. There were piles of reports against Katrina. SAPD didn't save her life, right? This case is not charged as a word I'm not allowed to say, homicide. He was charged as abuse. Now, the evidence that the state provided to me, and almost everything I received from the state. This first, the fact is Mercedes had asthma. Mercedes' 6-year-old sister Jordan had a front row seat for everything that happened. To her sister and to her. They were living at the time on February 7th at the apartment of a friend, Jeanette. I believe she's going to be one of the state witnesses. They didn't have any place to live because she had been thrown out of everywhere. Jordan said that day that her mother was, Jordan's word, jamming food down Mercedes' mouth. Mercedes kept spitting it up. She was being gorged, she kept spitting it up. Katrina got mad, according to Jordan's statement. I wasn't there. And she said she jammed the spoon down her throat. At that point, Mercedes, who had been on a chair, fell off the chair. According to Jordan, she had no breath. Katrina went down to the floor and tried to give her breath at least twice, but Mercedes had no more breath. According to Jordan, at that point, Mercedes was picked up by her mother, and they didn't go to 911 call. They didn't do anything. They ran to Jose Angel's apartment, which was in the same complex. Apparently, he tried to resuscitate her too. He tried, according to Jordan, tried to give her breath. She didn't have any more breath. After that, Jose took Katrina and Mercedes' body to the hospital. Now, they were all the way up by Hayden Road. I'm assuming you all know that general location of 510. They went to a hospital on the far south side, which is now closed. It was the Texas Vista Hospital. According to the reports from the ER, Katrina came running inside holding Mercedes' dead body. They didn't pronounce her dead right away, but they acknowledged that her body was lifeless and cold. Katrina told Jose to stay in the parking lot because her father didn't like him, and the father was at the hospital when they got there. He was screaming, "Help my child, help my baby." The ER people attempted resuscitation at least 3 times, which they're required to do, but there was never any hope. The charge nurse testified, or rather made a statement, that he actually pulled food out of Mercedes' mouth. Jordan was brought to the hospital by the police or somebody after Mercedes was taken there. And when she was interviewed, she said, "I'm the good child." We took her to the morgue. Mercedes battered her body. The medical examiner did an autopsy. His basic cause of death was murder by muscle collapse. I'm sorry, take that word back. Sorry.
Excuse me,
Homicide.
excuse me. All right, the objection will be sustained. Defense, this is what you all requested, that that term not be used. So you're not allowed to use that term, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Emmy said there was muscle collapse, and that was the cause of the child's death. But he didn't rule out asphyxia. And that's something I've been working on because I believe it was a matter of asphyxia that caused her death, based on the testimony of Jordan, the 6-year-old child.
I'm gonna object to argument, Judge.
Sustained.
Now, Jose has been charged with various counts as they were just read to you. The state's main witness is Katrina Mendoza. She pled guilty to 1 count of serious bodily injury, but not that she did anything. That she failed by
I'm gonna-
omission.
Object to argument.
Sustained.
Not that she did anything but omission.
Again, I'm gonna object to argument. It's the same statement.
Sustained.
There were many charges, but ultimately pled to omission. Now, judge records and publishes everything that goes on in this courtroom. Normally, we don't have. to.
Object to relevant.
Sustained.
defense.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that you step outside the courtroom briefly, and I will bring you back. You're not allowed to discuss anything that you've heard so far. Does everyone understand? All right. Thank you. All right, everyone, please be seated. Defense, you may continue.
Katrina faces maximum of 45 years in prison, and she's applied for probation. Her sentence is delayed until after this trial to see how well she does in bringing charges, proving the charges against her.
I'm gonna object to argumentative.
Sustained.
She doesn't get her sentence until after this case. The Rule of Texas Rule of Criminal Procedure, 3814, does not allow a person to be convicted solely on the testimony of.
I'm gonna object to argumentative.
the rule-
Sustained.
Reading the rules argumentative.
Sustained.
I hope to prove that the source of all relevant evidence against Jose Angel is from Katrina. Allegedly, this happened in an apartment. Anything that was done would have been a limited number of people that were witnesses. But there is an advantage to Katrina for testifying against him.
I'm gonna object to argumentative, Judge.
Sustained.
Additionally, there's another rule that's going to be relevant, and that is the rule of evidence number 705. That rule applies to expert witnesses. And based on my theory that Katrina's behind everything that's heard, this means that we're allowed to ask the expert witnesses.
Judge, again, this is
Sustained.
argument, not opening statement.
This is called explanation.
Sustained.
Of the rule. Rule 705 allows us to question witnesses.
Judge,
Sustained.
I'm not allowed to mention any rules. of
The
evidence.
objections has been sustained.
Asking for further.
My, the objection has been sustained, counsel.
Am I clear, Your Honor? I'm not allowed to mention.
The
any rule?
objection has been sustained, counsel.
I'm gonna try this. In regard to the rules that I'm not supposed to mention, we have to ask the person their
Judge,
underlying
I
data.
have to object to the sidebar comments to your ruling.
Sustained.
The underlying data for their decisions. That ruling, or rather that hearing, has to be outside the presence. of
Judge,
the
I'm
jury.
gonna.
Sustained.
object.
You've heard about the burdens of proof. And the state has to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt of the facts. Everything that comes out by and large is from witnesses, not what I say. And that's another thing, because I'm talking to you, because I'm saying things to you. You don't have to listen to me, and you don't have to listen to the state. You do have to listen to the judge. The reality is, you're going to be making your decision based on the evidence that's presented against Jose Angel. There are clarifications, and we'll have to wait until the end to find out. There was a press conference
I'm
also.
gonna object to any press. It's not something that should come in evidence.
Your Honor, what's relevant about talking about.
Excuse me.
It's a motivation for why.
Excuse me, counsel. Make your opening statements. Opening statements are what you believe the evidence will show. So if you don't believe the evidence will show it, then it should not be before this jury.
There was a press conference right after the Mercedes death, and at that press conference, Joe Galley, who used to be one of the reporters for Channel 12, asked a witness, family member,
I'm gonna object to hearsay.
All right, that'll be overruled.
asked a family member about what had happened, and the family member said, we've all tried many times, reports to CPS and the police to try to save Mercedes. Nothing was done. That's relevant because Joe next asked,
This is objection argumentative.
okay,
Sustained.
so anyway, motivations came out for that factor. The judges in the case, despite what I say, what you see is what counts. I am asking for a not guilty. At this point, Jose Angel is still presumed innocent. Jose Angel is not an angel. He's a hookup guy. I'm not an angel either. Not a hookup girl, but.
I'm gonna be
Sustained.
argumentative.
All right, state, call your first witness.
Judge, at this time, the state would invoke the rule.
All right, the rule will be invoked. Call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we make sure defense doesn't have any witnesses in the courtroom? I believe somebody who has been subpoenaed is in the courtroom.
All right, the rule has been invoked. Are there any witnesses in the courtroom for either the state or the defense?
I subpoenaed channel 12, Your Honor. I think they're.
Are there any witnesses in the courtroom? Who did you subpoena for? Who did you subpoena from channel 12?
The news editor, the news director.
All right, is the news director from channel 12 in the courtroom?
It was
No,
the
they are
Dukas-
not.
It was the Dukas Takem to bring the news report.
They are not here.
Well,
The
I didn't
editor
think-
is not here.
Somebody from channel 12 is, so, right?
They are not the editor. Who did you subpoena the editor or did you subpoena the person who's here?
And I don't know who's here. And Miss Mitchell's the one that said there was some witness in the courtroom. The only person I subpoenaed was the head of the newsroom at channel 12.
All right. Is the head of channel 12 present in the courtroom? They are not. Call your first witness.
The state calls Gustavo Cervantes.
If you'll take a seat here, please. Could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so that the members of the jury can hear and the court reporter can hear.
Okay.
All right, if you'll state your name for the record, please.
Gustavo Cervantes.
State.
Okay. Good morning, Gustavo. Where are you presently employed?
I'm on the trauma team at University Hospital.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there since May.
Okay, and what is your role?
I'm a staff nurse in the trauma team.
So, what kind of training do you need to become a staff nurse in a trauma center?
Usually good long experience in the emergency room in general.
Experience in the emergency room?
Yes.
So, do you have a degree or any kind of certification?
I'm a registered nurse.
Okay. And I know it sounds pretty fundamental, but what kind of schooling do you have to be a registered nurse?
I have an associate's. It's a 2-year degree,
From what institution?
Galen College of Nursing,
And when did you get that?
2015.
Okay. So, when you got your degree, at Galen, did you start working right away?
Well, I was already working in the emergency room at Downtown Baptist since 2008. I was an LVN at the time, but I was in the ER from 2008 to 2015, and then just finished my degree and kept working in the emergency room.
So what's the difference between an RN and an LVN?
Amount of responsibility, the kind of medications you can give, the training, the schooling teaches you more about this disease process and how to manage patients.
Okay. And so you were an LVN before you were an RN, right?
Correct.
What training did you have to be an LVN?
It was a 14-month school. I got it through the Army.
Okay. And how long were you in the Army?
8.5 active and 6 in the reserves.
From what years?
1994 to 2002 active duty, 2002 to 2008 reserves.
And did you serve as an LVN in the Army?
And the reserves and active duty, I was infantry.
Okay. So you're infantry and then you got your LVN certification in the Army.
In the reserves.
In the reserves, and you served in that capacity.
Correct.
Okay. So then in, let's see, 2008, that's when you left the military?
Correct.
And you went to work for the ER in Downtown Baptist?
Correct.
How is working in an ER different than working in another part of the hospital?
The pace, you don't know what to expect. You're getting everybody fresh after injury or when the disease is going, so you have to figure everything out. Other parts of the floor, you know what's going on with the patient. You have a general idea, all the testing is done. With us, it's more finding out process, and a lot of times just acute care. So you're getting them fresh. You might be trying to save their life. You might be just trying to find out what's wrong with them in general.
Okay. And is it safe to say that, I mean, you said the words, you never know what you're gonna get. Is it safe to say that the individuals who are working in the ER have to have a more broad knowledge? What they're looking at.
Jack of all trades.
So you first worked in the ER in 2008 at Downtown Baptist. And then in 2015, you got your associates and became an RN, registered nurse. Where did you go in 2015?
2015, I stayed there at Downtown Baptist. And then I went and did liaison work for a rehab hospital for about a year, and then went back to the ER where I wanted to be.
Okay. And the liaison work, was that still with Downtown Baptist?
No, that was a different company, a Warm Springs Rehab.
What was it?
Warm Springs Rehab.
Warm Springs. And how long were you doing that?
I did it for about a year, but it wasn't
And then you went back to an ER.
correct. Northeast Baptist.
Okay, you went to Northeast Baptist. And so that would have been what, 2016, 2017?
Around that, yes.
And you worked in the ER there?
Correct.
Were you just were you a staff nurse?
Staff nurse, yes.
Okay. And then how long did you stay at Northeast Baptist?
I stayed there for 2 years, and then I went to work as a post-op nurse for a small surgical hospital, Heidner Ambulatory Surgical Hospital,
Okay.
for about 2 years.
All right. And then after the post-op nurse, where did you work?
That's when COVID came around.
Okay.
So I went to work as a contract nurse, going to the most needed hospitals in Houston and here, just doing COVID nursing.
Okay, and is that similar to an ER environment?
It was still in the ER.
Yeah.
It was still the ER.
Did you eventually stop being a contract nurse?
Once everything settled down and they started opening back up, I actually finished my COVID nursing. That's how I got to Southwest General.
Okay.
And they asked me to stay on as a charge nurse there once it was over.
Okay. So do you remember what year you went to Southwest General?
That would have been in 2021.
2021?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I'm not.
And at some point, did Southwest General change names or?
They did. They changed names to Texas Vista Medical Center.
Okay, now you said you became a charge nurse there.
Correct.
How is that different than a staff nurse?
You're responsible for the entire ER for your shift, as far as assignments, being an in-between with the nurses and doctors, making sure the nurses are doing their job, basically.
Head nurse.
Correct.
And were you in the ER at Southwest General?
Yes.
Okay, Texas Vista.
Yes.
So at this point, you know, we're up to, you started Southwest General in 2021. Do you remember when it turned to Texas Vista?
Sometime in 22, I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So you're there in 2022, and when did it shut down, right?
Correct.
When did it shut down?
May of last year.
Were you there until it was?
I was
closed?
there on the very last day.
Okay. Now, that is, let's see, if I can do my math. Serves. So you've been working in an ER type of environment for about 20 years. Is that safe to say?
60 since
16?
2008.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Um, 16 years. Have you seen, children come into the ER
Many times, yes,
many times?
many times.
Can you estimate like more than 100?
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay. Have you seen, people who came in who maybe, had exercised too hard and hurt themselves?
Right.
Have you seen people that come in that had been beaten?
Yes, all the time.
In February of 2022. Actually, I'm gonna pause for a second. Yeah. Okay, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm gonna show you what I have marked for identification purposes. And State's Exhibit number 1. Can you please do an X where Southwest General Texas Vista was located?
Further down. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just trying
I
to,
think he's thinking out loud.
yeah, I'm trying to.
All right,
find
so
exactly-
if you all are thinking out loud, the court reporter puts that on the record.
Okay.
And if you're gonna think out loud, then you need to speak up so she can hear it.
Apologies. Yes, sure. It was further towards the south.
Okay.
It was generally, it was, sorry, I apologize. It was generally, golly, this map isn't as.
Okay,
detailed.
so the map doesn't show it.
No,
Okay, let me see if I can get it better.
sorry.
Okay, so February 7th of 2022. Were you working as the charge nurse at Texas Vista Hospital on that day?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall a patient by the name of Mercedes Lozoya?
Yes,
You just testified that you have probably seen over 100 children that come in and multiple people, numerous people who have been beaten or overworked. So what is it about Mercedes Lozoya that you remember so well?
all the, just the way she was presented to us, and just
Okay,
the condition.
okay. You said how she was presented to you. First of all, do you recall how old Mercedes Lozoya was?
5 years old.
Who brought her to the hospital?
My initial understanding was mom ran in with her, yelling for help. And that's when my triage nurse grabbed her from mom and brought her down to the main ER where we were at.
And mom was screaming for help, you said?
That's what I was told by the triage nurse.
Could you hear her?
Once they came out of the triage area near the front entrance, I could hear them down the hallway.
Okay, and what did you hear?
Save my baby, some other things that really, at that point, I just focused on the child.
And so who brought you Mercedes?
My triage nurse grabbed her from mom, I guess, at the front, and came running down the hallway, also yelling that she wasn't breathing.
Okay. And did you at any time take over the care?
I
of
did.
Mercedes?
I did. I took her from the triage nurse and carried her into the room that was right behind us. Put her on the bed, and that's when we started working.
Okay. So, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna show you what's been labeled State's Exhibit number 2.
Yeah.
What is that?
This is the chart, Mercedes. It's her medical record.
Okay. And who authored this?
That would be me.
So you authored this report?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what was the purpose of making these records?
To record the care of the patient, what was given, what was done, to maintain the record. Just
Okay.
record maintenance.
And is this something you do for all patients? that
Every
come in?
patient, every patient has a medical record.
Okay.
Correct.
And is it important for medical history to make a
Right.
record of everything?
Right. Everything needs to be recorded for the patient's health, for future visits, and also for legal reasons, of course, to make sure that everything that we do for the patient is recorded and it's correct and it's
Okay. So when we're looking at this, what kind of information did you record here?
you always have the time of arrival, her triage level, the condition they came in, include the initial assessment, which is their mental status, their consciousness, weight, medical history, allergies, all that good things.
What is medical history?
Any previous medical conditions, surgeries that the patient may have had?
Okay, and obviously Mercedes came in injured and needing help. So who did you get that history from? Who would that history have come from?
In a normal situation, it would have been the parent.
Okay. What is the Glasgow coma scale?
That's a scale we use to determine the patient's their consciousness, basically. It grades the vision, the eye response, verbal response, and motor response of the patient. It goes from 3 to 15, 15 being completely alert and awake, normal, and 3 is completely unresponsive.
Okay. Is that part of the triage process?
Correct.
Okay. What was Mercedes?
She was a 3,
And again, that meant she was,
completely unresponsive.
completely unresponsive.
Correct.
Okay. What else is done in triage?
Triage is basically gathering the complaint, whether they're and allergies, history, weight, and we take into account why they're there to determine what their acuity level is.
Okay. And so who was, were you doing the triage?
Yeah, so normally it's done at the front by the triage nurse who assigns them a acuity level depending on how serious their condition is. And it tells us how fast we need to get them back or whether they can wait. In a situation like that, she was a level 1, meaning the life is at risk. They bring them straight back and it's all done. We're basically doing it all at the same time. The triage, well, not initially, no, we're not typing in everything in. We're working on the patient, and after the fact, we complete the appropriate charting.
Okay. So, as part of your care of Mercedes, did you have to sorry, I lost my train. She was unresponsive.
Correct.
So what treatment did you provide for Mercedes?
We took her to the room immediately. First thing is checking for ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. Notice there was no chest rise, assumed she wasn't breathing. Checked her pulses. And there were about 2 of us checking pulses. Usually when there's a patient in that condition, there was no pulse. So we started chest compressions immediately. And then in the process of trying to get circulatory access, IV access. Let me,
So you checked her levels, right? And you didn't feel a pulse.
Correct.
Did you do any kind of medical intervention?
right, the CPR, we were trying to establish airway. She had mashed bananas in her mouth, which we had to take out. I digitally removed it so we could actually get access to her airway, start giving her ventilations with a VVM.
Okay.
Try to establish IV access, which was nearly impossible. We ended up
I'm sorry, IV access, you said was nearly impossible?
yeah, there was the veins weren't giving us any return.
Okay, can
So-
you explain that to the jury? What does it mean that the veins weren't giving a return?
So with a IV catheter, it has a chamber in it that gives, when you hit the vein, it gives you a blood return. So you know you're in the vein and you can advance. My nurses were putting it in and there was no blood return. When there's lack of circulation, that can happen. There's nothing coming back, and it's the pressure from the vein that pushes the blood in.
Okay, let me stop you there. You said a lack of circulation can cause that.
Right.
Was there anything else about Mercedes that led you to believe that her blood wasn't circulating?
In the initial moment when you're working on the patient, you're not noticing every condition of the patient. You're concentrating on trying to get them breathing and get the pulse back. However, notice her skin was already ashen.
I'm gonna jump to the narrative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You said her skin was ashy. Why is that relevant to you in your assessment?
Pallor and ashiness is a sign of poor blood perfusion. So when there's a pulse is lost, the patient's skin color changes because of the lack of blood perfusion.
Okay. How does the appearance of blood change?
Depending on the time that they've been pulseless, the blood will darken because of the lack of oxygen.
Okay, so the blood will darken. Did you?
Ask your next question.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Judge. How did Mercedes' blood appear that day?
So after they were failing to get proper IV access, we actually got access with an IO, which is an intraosseous. So it's a needle we push into the bone of the below the knee, which is similar, not the best, but it's similar to start trying to get fluids, medications. We didn't get any real blood return there. I finally got IV access on the side of the neck, and the blood return was dark. It was very dark.
It was very dark. And what does that tell you?
It's unoxygenated blood.
It's not oxygenated blood.
Correct.
And for us lay people, what does that mean?
So bright red blood is going to be in the arteries. That's going to be your oxygenated blood coming from the heart, going to the body. When it goes back in the veins, whenever you got a cut on your finger or anything, it's a little darker than oxygenated blood, but it's still red. The darker it is, the less oxygen is in it.
Okay. So does that have something to do with her heart function?
Right. If there hadn't been any circulation going, that means that none of the blood is passing through the lungs to pick up oxygen. So the body is using up whatever oxygen is there and it's depleting it. So the blood is going to get darker.
Okay. You said you had worked at Northeast Baptist Hospital.
Mhm.
How far, well, I'm sorry.
Sounds like a motion.
Okay. You worked at Northeast Baptist,
Correct.
right? How far away is that from where Texas Vista was?
At the time I lived about probably 10 minutes or 7, 8 minutes, a little northeast of even Northeast Baptist, and it would take me about anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes to get to work.
Okay. Were there other hospitals in the area?
You have Northeast Methodist, you have Northeast Baptist. Sure, I think. On the way there, there's also several urgent cares, and they might not be open, but you have the standalone emergency rooms all the way through.
Okay. Brenda, may I approach?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna show you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 3. What is this?
It's Mercedes Lasoya.
It's Mercedes. Is it a photo?
Correct.
Okay. Is this the little girl that you saw that day?
Correct.
Was that a fair and accurate depiction?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would offer into evidence State's Exhibit number 3.
No objection, Your Honor.
Right, State's Exhibit 3 is admitted without objection.
Okay. At this time, I would also offer State's Exhibit number 2, which was his report.
1 and 2.
Just
Number 2.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit number 2 is admitted without objection.
So at this time, your report is in evidence. Can you please read the narrative that you wrote?
On 2/8/22 at 112, the child was brought in by mother at 1904. I took the child from the mother's hands, and that was my mistake. That my memory was of the situation. It didn't happen so fast. I actually took it from my triage nurses.
Okay.
And I placed her in a room 12 directly behind them where they had come in. Child was pulseless. CPR began immediately. Several rounds of high quality CPR and BVM assisted ventilations were given. Patient never regained.
Excuse me, if you can slow down.
I apologize. Okay, I placed her in room 12 directly behind them. Child was pulseless. CPR begun immediately. Several rounds of high quality CPR and BVM assisted ventilations were given. Patient never regained ROSC, which is return of spontaneous circulation when you get a pulse back. And the code was called, meaning time of death was called. Dr. Newton called time of death at 1918, 7/18. Child was noticed to have generalized bruising over body, posteriorly and anteriorly, along with scratches, missing areas of hair on head, wounds to her feet, and toenails missing on 2 toes of the left foot. Child had food still in her mouth on arrival. Per mom's statement, she had been feeding the child when she passed out and hit her head on a lamp. Mom stated she propped up child and continued trying to feed her. SAPD was called during CPR due to appearance of the patient's body. CPS also involved. Investigations being conducted by SAPD and CPS. Postmortem completed. ME en route for child's body.
Now, on the next page, the ED triage assessment. Can you please read what the ED triage note says?
Mother yelling for help in ER, child taken straight into room. No pulse, CPR started. Child had chunks of food in mouth and generalized bruising was noticed on patient's body. Bruising in different stages of healing. Noticed several wounds to child's feet with toenails missing from 2 toes on left foot.
There's a note that says that bruising was in various stages of healing.
Correct.
What does that indicate?
That the bruises were caused at different days, weeks, maybe. I mean,
Did you observe, if you remember, did you observe any injuries that looked like they had just occurred?
There were newer bruises on her. I don't recall exactly where, but there were some that were darker than others.
Are you able to determine timeline of bruises?
Not exact timeline, but
I would object to this, Your Honor. Stating
Overruled.
timer.
Overruled. You can answer the
Uh,
question, but just answer the question that's asked of you.
you cannot exactly determine when, but you can differentiate between newer and older bruises.
Okay. And newer could be within a week, the last week.
Day a week, yeah.
Um. Do you know what rhabdomyolysis is?
Yes, it's I do.
What is that?
It's when muscle in the body starts to break down for there can be several reasons. It breaks down and it can cause myoglobin, which is what muscles are made of. It can go to the kidneys and cause kidney failure, and it can increase your lactic acid in your blood, making your blood more acidic. It can cause nausea, vomiting, lethargy, malaise, and up to death.
Okay. So it can cause fatigue,
Correct.
it can cause nausea,
Correct.
and is malaise just another way to say fatigue?
Correct.
Okay. And is that something that will immediately lead to a coma, or is it something that takes time?
It's progressive. If it goes untreated, it's progressive.
I mean, it takes a few days or longer.
It can, depending on the damage to the muscle.
Okay.
How much is there?
And you said Mercedes had bruises all over her body.
Correct.
Is trauma like that something that can cause rhabdomyolysis in your?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor, to the qualification of the witness to make the statement of what causes it.
All right, do you want to lay the foundation?
Um, what is trauma? When you say trauma can cause it, what do you mean?
Trauma is any injury to the body from an outside force.
And had you seen, is rhabdomyolysis something that you have been seen diagnosed while you're in the ER?
Many times, and I even had it mildly myself at one point.
Okay. And so you've seen cases where you knew that trauma.
Objection to the leading, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Have you seen cases of rhabdomyolysis where trauma was a contributing factor?
Many times.
What else can be a factor for rhabdomyolysis?
I mean, what else can cause it?
Yes.
Extreme amounts of exercise without proper hydration, dehydration, infection, metabolic issues, somebody with defective liver.
And if rhabdomyolysis is left untreated, what organs of the body does it hurt?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the
It's not
question.
established that he has the expertise to answer that, Your Honor.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the question.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What happens to the body if rhabdomyolysis is not treated?
So the release of the breakdown of muscle, the myoglobin, can affect the kidneys. That's what they call it, tea-colored urine. Your urine gets very dark, decrease in urine production. It can cause lactic acid release into the blood, making the blood more acidic. And then all the symptoms we already mentioned. And eventually it can cause the heart to be unable to contract properly. Reduces there, the high level of acidity can cause multiple organ failure.
Okay. Would you say that someone that has rhabdomyolysis left untreated may have a substantial risk of death?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the witness's expertise.
That'll be overruled.
Correct.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm gonna try this again. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully this is better. I have labeled this State's Exhibit number 4. This is a new map.
Okay.
Does this show where Southwest General would be?
Yes, it's gonna be down to the south.
Okay, can you mark that with an X for me?
Here in this area.
Okay. And I guess go ahead and circle it for me. Okay. Now, what other hospitals did you say were in
Asked and
there?
answered, Your Honor.
Overruled.
What other hospitals did you say were in the area from Northeast Baptist to Southwest General?
You have Northeast Baptist a little further,
And this map indicates Northeast Baptist.
Correct.
Is that a correct location?
correct.
Okay.
A little further east, you have Northeast Methodist.
Can you mark maybe with,
It's in generally near the Live Oak area around there.
okay, you got a circle. Can you put maybe a line through it? That's Northeast Methodist.
Mhm.
Okay.
If you keep going further down, SAMC, the military medical hospital is there.
Okay.
That's another one that they would not refuse a patient.
Okay.
Actually near Northeast, there's a standalone emergency room. that
Okay.
I actually did part-time there
You put a circle there.
around
Okay.
there. And I think you're also passing by the medical center,
Okay.
which has countless hospitals.
Can you maybe just do a square around where the medical center would be? Okay. What about on the south side? Is there anything else? Any other medical center or hospitals you could think of on the south side?
South side, Mission Trail
Okay.
Hospital, which is here by Brook City Base.
Okay.
And there's also in the vicinity, there's 2 Baptist standalone hospitals. mini
Okay.
Hospitals as well.
Okay.
I don't remember the approximation of those.
That's okay. And it was your testimony that there are urgent care centers.
Urgent at that time of the night, maybe not, but definitely there's San Antonio's opened up a ton of small standalone ERs.
Okay. And you brought up a good point. What time of night was it?
I believe it was 7. Yes. Yeah, it was 7 p.m.
And this map, is this a true and accurate depiction of San Antonio?
Correct.
No objection, Your
Your
Honor.
Honor, Your Honor, I would offer State's Exhibit number 4.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Okay. So just to review, so this circle with an X is Southwest General
Approximately, yeah.
or Texas Vista, right? This
Mhm.
general area. And then we have, what you say, Fort Sam, you have the medical center over here. You have Northeast Baptist, you have Northeast Methodist, or no, this was Northeast Methodist. Which one was this?
That was a standalone emergency room.
Okay, it was just a standalone ER.
Mm.
So is it a fair assessment to say that there are more hospitals in the Northeast area than there are on the south side?
Correct.
And based on the condition of this child, how urgent
did she need medical care?
She needed to go to the nearest facility.
Based on your observations of the child, do you have an opinion whether she was had trauma on her body?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, how much?
Literally from head to toe, there was trauma, front and back.
Did you check her mouth or her facial area as part of your exam?
Right. Initially to remove the food that was still in her mouth. And then after the fact, during assessing the body,
Okay.
um,
Did you see anything in her mouth area, if you remember?
in her mouth area, I don't remember exactly, but there was bruising in the general area.
Was there bruising on her face?
I believe so.
Okay. Did you notice anything about her hair?
She had an area of her head that was missing hair. It looked like it was missing.
Okay. Did you ever speak to the mother, Katrina Mendoza?
I did not.
Did you stay with Mercedes?
I did.
What happened after Mercedes was declared deceased?
Afterwards, we had called SAPD and CPS who were on scene, and the investigator for CPS was there, and he needed to take pictures for investigation. So it was my patient, and as a charge nurse, I was in there, and I was helping turn the body. I was turning the body so they could take the appropriate pictures.
Okay.
And then again for SAPD's investigator.
Did she have bruises? You said you turned her over. Did she have bruises on her backside?
All the way down, yes.
All the way down. Were they patchy, like one bruise and then another one? How continuous was the bruising?
They were all pretty approximated, different conditions of healing.
What would you refer to it as widespread?
Correct.
It covered her. I'll pass the witness room.
Defense.
Good morning, sir. My name is Teresa Connolly.
Good morning.
Thank you, sir. Did you know Mercedes had asthma? Was there anything about that in the admitting concept?
No,
Didn't know anything about it.
did not.
You were first alerted to this, as I understand, by the sound of the mother yelling, "Save my baby."
The mother was yelling and my triage nurse was yelling.
She was yelling too, the nurse?
Right, that she had a child that wasn't breathing.
I'm sorry, what?
She had a child that wasn't breathing to let us know what
That
she was
was her
bringing.
first response, that the child was not breathing. Is that correct?
Yes, along those lines, yes.
When you touched the child, was she breathing?
When initially when I grabbed her, I wasn't assessing. I was taking her to the room so we could lay her down and start working and make that assessment.
In your report, you stated that she was cold.
Right.
What did that indicate to you?
That initially it just indicates that she's cold, but there was no way for me to know why until we started the assessment.
Now, you said that, as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, that you tried to take blood or put an IV in the child. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as I understand it, you said that the blood that you took out was very dark.
Correct.
And where were you able to take that blood from? What part of Mercedes' body?
We finally got access on the right side of her neck.
Right side there. There was some comment in here about you had to go to her shin.
Right. That was another attempt to gain access. That's intraosseous access. It's a drill we put into the bone.
Actually a drill, and this was for the IV, wasn't it?
Right, especially with children, it's something we use commonly.
Was she given any anesthesia before you drilled into her leg?
No,
Why not?
because it's the type of emergency situation it is, it's not required.
Because she wasn't breathing, right?
It's because of we were doing CPR.
But she wasn't breathing.
Correct.
If she had been alive, would you have given her an anesthesia before you put a drill on her leg?
Not necessarily.
Object to relevance.
Overruled.
Not necessarily. There are situations, especially when there's respiratory issues, that by protocol, we can start an intraosseous on a child.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Intraosseous into the bone, the drill into the bone. That because of the situation and why they're coming in, we can start it, and we don't generally use anesthesia when we start them. But the majority of the time when we start them, the patient is not awake.
Thank you. My next notes say different stages of healing. Is that in regard to all the bruises?
Correct.
You have any idea, can you estimate at all how old the oldest bruise might have been?
There's no way to tell exactly when or when it could have happened, but you can differentiate between older and newer by their color.
Were there black and blue traces or yellow traces or red? Do you remember any of that?
All of the above.
All of the above. Now, you said that you examined her various eyes, nose, whatnot. Did you notice anything particular about her eyes? Did you open them and take a look?
Unresponsive. They were, I'm sorry, not unresponsive. Yes, unresponsive to light.
Did they have any red specks in them?
Not that I recall. I
Did
don't
you look for
recall.
that?
If it's one of those things that's obvious when you look, but
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
it's
that.
one of those things that if you see, you see it. When we open the eyes, we're looking for the responses of the pupil.
You weren't looking to see if the eye itself manifested anything, just whether it was.
Not necessarily, not in that moment, no.
Thank you. Now, there was food in her mouth. And you said, if I understand you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to pull it out to open her airwaves. Is that right?
Correct.
Would that have made a difference for an asthmatic to have blocked airways?
If she was having an asthma attack, definitely would make it harder for them to try to take in air.
But you have no information that she was having an asthma attack, do you?
Right.
And the problem with an asthma attack is that the blood doesn't get oxygen. Is that correct?
That can happen. Correct. The airways close down and they can't take air in.
Did you wonder why a mother was feeding a 5-year-old child?
Of course, we try to, I mean, it's something that was stated and thought about, but I didn't think about that deeply. It was other things we were doing.
Did anybody ask her why she was feeding a 5-year-old child?
Object
That
to speculation.
Overruled.
I recall, no, not that I heard or that I recall.
You mentioned with rhabdomyolysis that you actually had it yourself.
A mild case.
You lived.
Right.
Good.
I appreciate that.
When you had CPS in the room, do you recall any of the conversation?
With the CPS,
Check calls for hearsay.
Overruled. Just answer the question. Not what anybody said.
I did.
Did they, as a result of your conversation with CPS, did you understand that they were familiar with this case?
Object to hearsay.
I didn't ask for hearsay. I said.
All right, so everyone, stop talking over each other. Everyone, make your legal objection and I'll make a ruling. And your objection is hearsay?
It calls for hearsay.
All right, and what is your response, counsel?
All right, I didn't ask for hearsay. I said as a result of the conversation, what did he observe?
You may answer that question.
Can you be more specific? What did I observe as far?
Any indication that they had been familiar with the case?
After the fact, after,
Object to.
All right, so counsel, re-ask your question.
As a result of your conversation with CPS, do you recall that they indicated a familiarity with Mercedes' case,
not initially,
but at some point?
correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? No further questions. Ask the witness.
One final question, if you can answer it. How quickly, once the heart stops circulating, how quickly does it take for the blood to become dark like that? What kind of time frame?
It's not easy to say, but it can take a little bit of time because there's still going to be oxygen in the blood for.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It calls for speculation on
Sustained.
Mr. Cervantes' part.
Is there a minimum time? I'm not necessarily in how far it can possibly go, but a minimum. Is it going to be more than 5 minutes?
More than 5 minutes, correct.
Is it going to be more than 10 minutes?
Most likely.
No further questions.
Mr. Cervantes, the cause of death that you have on your records here indicates cardiac arrest. Is that correct?
That's not, we're not determining cause of death. We're determining her state when she comes in,
I'm sorry, her
her
what?
condition when she comes in.
Cardiac arrest is on there. What is the title of the place where cardiac arrest is written on that report?
What page are we on?
Don't know, you have it. Thank you.
Unable to respond reason, is that what we're talking about? So there's a part here where during the triage, where it's asking questions, different kinds of questions, general questions we ask all the patients, and when we say that they unable to respond, we have to ask why, we have to state why.
And
And
the answer was,
cardiac arrest.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. No other questions, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Just one clarification question. If someone came in with a head trauma, say a subdural hematoma, and then they stopped having a pulse, but before you knew it was a hematoma, is it safe that you would probably put cardiac arrest?
Correct.
Okay, so it just means the heart's not pumping.
It means a heart stop.
Okay. It's not a cause of death.
Right.
No further questions.
But it could be.
What's that?
Cardiac
Object to
arrest could be.
speculation.
That objection will be overruled. You can remain seated when you ask your question, and if you can answer it, answer it.
Cardiac arrest can be and determine, and there could be but you have to, it's the ME's job to determine what caused the cardiac arrest.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. No
Mhm.
more questions. Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
He's excused from the state, Your Honor.
Anybody? No? He's excused from the defense, Your Honor.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is that you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone You're not allowed to view anything about this case. Do you understand?
Correct. Yes.
All right, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
State calls Ryan Cahill.
If you'll leave the exhibits, please. No problem.
Who is this, Ryan? He's the first one. It's a what?
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please.
Oh, yeah, he is, but he's- Who is this guy?
Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand, have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so members of the jury and the court reporter can hear.
Yes, ma'am.
If you'll state your name for the record.
Ryan Cahill.
State.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Cahill, did you used to be called something different than Mr. Cahill?
Yes, I was formerly Officer Cahill with the San Antonio Police Department.
Thank you. And you no longer work for San Antonio Police Department, is that correct?
Correct.
When did you stop working for San Antonio Police Department?
About the middle of 2022.
Okay, like summer?
Yes.
And when did you start your career with San Antonio Police Department?
About the summer of 2017.
Okay, so that's, if my math is correct and better than Brittany's, it was what, 6 years?
A little under 5 years, I believe.
Okay, so we're both bad at math. So tell the jury, well, I'm sorry, prior to working with San Antonio Police Department, did you have any previous law enforcement experience?
Yes, I was with the U.S. Army for about 8 years as a military police canine officer.
Okay, and what, so after the military, that's when you joined SAPD, is that correct?
Correct. Yes, I was released early from the military to be able to join SAPD.
And can you tell the jury about your career with SAPD?
Yes, I was with SAP for a little under 5 years. I worked on South Patrol as a patrol officer. About a year before I left, I was certified as a field training officer and performed as a field training officer for that final year of my service there.
Okay, I'm gonna back you up a little bit. You mentioned South Patrol. What does South Patrol mean?
So basically, we patrol the southern part of San Antonio. You know, kind of goes all the way from the west to pretty much the east side, but that whole southern section, basically below the median line of San Antonio.
Okay, and what shift did you typically work?
It was T shift.
What does that mean?
We went in at 5 p.m. We would get out at about 3 in the morning. It was we called it like a power shift that would overlap the busiest times of the day to assist the other shifts with kind of the more active times of the day.
Okay, and you talked about being a field training officer. What duties do you have as a field training officer?
So as an FTO, my primary duty is to assist the probationary officers with their training and their transitions to becoming a full-time independent officer on their own. What I do is I primarily review their reports, watch them while they're at the calls. If there's anything that they need assistance with or they're struggling with, that's when I'll kind of step in, kind of make sure that nothing goes anywhere it shouldn't go. If there's something that they haven't experienced before, they're not struggling with it, and kind of assist them through the calls with whatever who were there to help needs and any questions that they have.
So basically you're training new officers.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. Just in general, what training does an officer go through when becoming a full-fledged officer with San Antonio Police Department?
So after you go through the academy, which is several months long, then you're going to have a 3-month period where you'll spend in the FTO program as a probationary officer. You're rotated through 3 FTOs. You'll spend 1 month with each FTO. You'll be at different substations around the city, so that way you kind of get exposure to all different environments and different types of calls and things like that. At the end of your 3-month period, You'll spend 2 weeks in evaluations with 2 other officers that you have no experience with, who are also FTOs, and they'll evaluate you over those 2 weeks based off of a rating scale, and then you have to pass that. If you pass that, you'll be certified as a full officer to be able to work independently on your own. If you don't pass it, you'll go back into remedial training. You'll basically do another month or whatever is needed with additional FTOs until you're able to pass your certification.
Okay. And so specifically focusing on the FTO portion that you talked about, where they are with 3 different field training officers, are there different phases and levels to that training that they go through?
Yes, there is. There's 3 phases, and kind of the point of the 3 phases is to give them more responsibility as time goes on. Being that, you know, they just got out of the academy, they have a lot of the textbook experience, but they don't have a lot of the interactive real world experience because it's hard to train that in the academy. So we're kind of, it's almost a handoff, if you will, as far as giving them more and more responsibility as they go.
And are you, or were you, a certified peace officer?
Yes.
Okay, so are you currently still, or?
Yes, currently for this year, my certification will lapse if I don't complete the required TCOL courses by the end of the year.
Okay, and just why did you leave San Antonio Police Department?
Your Honor, object to relevance.
How's this relevant?
I mean, Judge, I want to make sure he left on good terms.
All right, the objection is sustained.
Were you working as a San Antonio police officer on February 7th of 2022?
Yes, I was.
At that point in time, were you training anyone?
Yes, I was.
Who were you training?
Officer Lasario,
What phase of her training was she in?
I believe she was in 3rd phase.
And a little bit more than what we've already talked about, what does 3rd phase fully mean?
So 3rd phase, what I typically do and most FTOs do in 3rd phase is we're mostly giving the probationary officer the full independence at the calls, and we're kind of just a secondary kind of, we fill more of a cover officer role unless there's just something that we need to step in for or something they haven't encountered in their previous phases. But pretty much at that phase, they're mostly operating on their own.
On February 7th, were you dispatched to a case involving a Mercedes Lasoya?
Yes, I was.
Where were you dispatched to?
At the time, it's called Texas Vista Hospital.
Okay. Why do you say at the time?
It changed its name several times, and then now it's currently, as far as I know, no longer in operation.
Why were you dispatched to Texas Vista?
We were dispatched for a DOA of a child.
What does DOA mean?
Basically means that the individual was brought in unresponsive or was found unresponsive at some point and is basically believed to be or has been pronounced deceased.
Okay. And in fact, what does DOA stand for?
Dead on arrival.
And so tell me, when you have a field training officer, how does that look? Do you ride together? Do you ride separately?
Yes, we ride together. And as I said, I kind of perform as a cover officer, kind of doing what she needs and just kind of he or she, and then kind of helping them out with whatever they may need or stepping in if needed. But we're pretty much always attached because it is my responsibility as the FTO to make sure that nothing does happen that shouldn't happen and make sure that I'm watching over that officer as well.
Okay. So is it fair to say that everything that you're saying you did that day, you did with Officer Lasario?
Correct.
Okay. What happened when you arrived to Texas Vista?
Immediately upon arrival, we got a briefing from the staff there who told us that there was.
Sustained.
I'm going to stop you real quick. You're not allowed to talk about what people told you.
Okay.
So you got a briefing, and without saying what they told you, what did you do next?
Okay. I got a briefing. From that, we went to the room where Mercedes' mother was located. We made contact with her, and then.
Just stop you real quick. Okay. You said Mercedes' mother. Do you remember her name?
Yes, Katrina.
Do you remember her last name?
Katrina Mendoza.
Okay. And so while talking to her, just what was her demeanor?
So her demeanor was She was, in my opinion, my experience, with talking to a lot of individuals and a lot of interviews, she was attempting to appear very upset. But I do not feel, based off my experience, that she was legitimately upset. That it appeared that she was, by my experience, it appeared that she was more forcing the emotions rather than truly feeling the emotions.
How long did you talk to Katrina Mendoza?
There were several times that we kind of went in and out of the room with different things. If I had to put a time total, maybe a total time about an hour or so, broken up over different time periods.
Okay, so this initial time that you're talking to her, who was all in the room?
At the time, it was just me, Officer Lasario, and Katrina. And there, at one point in the beginning, the doctor that pronounced the deceased was in the room, but that was just at the beginning.
Okay. And in course of your investigation, did you learn that Katrina has any other children?
Yes, I did.
And how many other children does she have?
At the time, I was aware of one.
Do you know that other child's name?
Jordan?
Okay. Did this cause you any concerns?
Yes, definitely.
And what were your concerns?
My concerns was, at that time, I had observed Mercedes's body at that point and saw the extent of the injuries and the condition of her. And based off that, it immediately caused a high concern for me that if there's any other children involved, that we needed to immediately get them into custody, because if they were in any potential danger to what it appeared Mercedes had gone through, then we needed to try and get them to safety as soon as possible.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna call you Officer Cahill. I'm showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 3. Is this the condition you saw Mercedes in that night?
Yes, it is.
Can you take a minute and just, in your own words, describe what you saw Mercedes looking like?
Yes. When I went in, saw Mercedes, she at the time was covered with an apron. When I pulled back the apron, the injuries that she had sustained were clearly not something that under any circumstances could have ever been perceived as accidental. It was extensive injuries that were over multiple lengthy periods of time. She was covered from head to toe, her whole body in bruises, significant bruising. A large majority of her hair had been removed from her head. She had what appeared to be burn marks on her feet. I was informed that she had a soft spot in her skull, and it was basically there was no possibility that this wasn't a long.
That'll be sustained.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you another question, okay? You already expressed that you had concerns for Jordan's well-being. Were your concerns due to the extreme amount of injuries you saw on Mercedes?
Yes.
Due to that concern, what did you do?
At that time, we went and I talked with Katrina and was able to gain the information that her, at the time, she said boyfriend was in custody of the other child. And due to the extensive injuries that I observed on Mercedes and the possibility of, we didn't know who at that time had caused these injuries, I wanted to try and get both her boyfriend and the child to the hospital so we can make contact with them and take custody of the child. And then Katrina called.
I'm gonna pause you real quick. Sorry. So you said boyfriend. Did you learn who her boyfriend was at the time?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jose Ruiz.
Did you have an opportunity at some point in the night to make contact with Jose Ruiz?
Yes, I did.
Do you see him here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you identify him by an article of his clothing?
Yes, he's wearing a blue jacket.
Let the record reflect he has identified the defendant. Okay. I believe you mentioned asking Katrina about Jordan,
Yes.
correct? Without saying what she says, what do you observe her to do?
She used her phone and made a phone call.
Okay. On this phone call, what was her demeanor?
At first, she was trying to coordinate with the other individual on the end of the phone, and then she became extremely agitated and irate, began yelling and screaming.
Okay. And did that continue for the remainder of the phone call?
Yes, it did, and after.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you said and after?
Yes.
In your work as a San Antonio police officer, do you wear a body camera?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and we've talked about Officer Losario. Was she also wearing a body worn camera?
Yes, she was.
Are those in use while you are at a call?
Yes.
Are they constantly recording?
Yes, it's required by our policy that the moment we get the call or we're going to make contact with any individual of the public, that the body worn cam is activated and it remains activated until we complete that interaction.
How do body worn cameras get logged?
So when we activate them, we deactivate them at the end of the day. We put the body worn cameras into their charging docks. They're automatically uploaded into the servers and then they're stored in the servers.
How are they connected to a case?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How are they connected to a case?
So they're usually connected to the case by time frame. It's basically the system tries to say this officer, which is your body cam, is basically attached to you as the officer. This officer was on these calls during this time, and that camera would be attached to the call that you're on during that time.
Okay, is it fair to say that you don't have to attach it, the system does it automatically?
Yes.
May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Okay. So Cahill, I'm showing you what I've marked as states exhibits 5 and 6. Do you recognize those?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize them?
Through these are my initials and the date that I wrote on them.
Okay. Have you had opportunity to watch both of these prior to coming to court today?
Yes, I have.
And are they portions of your body worn camera from February 7th, 2022?
Yes.
Are they fair and accurate depictions of the events that occurred that day?
Yes, they are.
And I'm sorry, Officer Cahill, may I approach again, Judge?
Yes.
Are both of these from your body worn camera?
One of them is from mine, and then the other one is from Losario's when we're standing together.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you already said that. So I'm gonna clarify, States Exhibit 5, is that, whose body camera is that from?
That is from Officer Losario's.
Okay, and you already testified you've watched this in its entirety before coming to court today.
Yes, I have.
Were you present for the entirety of this video?
Yes.
May we approach, Judge?
Yes. All right, so everyone, we're going to be back at 12:45.